The origins of the manga come out of Japan and an incredible artist named Kishiro who created the mangas, I want to say 30 years ago.
Kishiro's original creation is something that inspires dreams.
The richness and the detail in the artwork created by Yukito Kishiro is what we're basing this world on.
I love the manga. I'm obsessed with it. I'm a huge fan. It just sucks you in right away, especially the battle sequences where you have Alita taking down these huge, monstrous cyborgs. Every frame is an explosive action sequence. It's so wonderful.
It's an origin story of a young female protagonist who comes into this world thinking of herself as someone who is insignificant. And she comes to discover that inside of her is a hero.
Well, 日本の実際には戦前から野良黒とかあったらしいんですけど、手塚治虫がね、戦後に日本の漫画を改めて創始したんですよね。結局のところ僕たちはみんな手塚治虫のその子孫みたいなものであって、で僕はもう生まれた頃にはもう不幸の名作と言われた作品がいくつもあって、手塚治虫もそうですし、明日のジョーとかそのね。忍者武芸帳だとかそういう作品がすでにもたくさんあって、で僕はもう小学生の時にはもうきら星のごとくスターな先生方がいっぱいいて、で絶対に漫画がなんか長いだろうなと思ったぐらいですよ。で昔に比べれば漫画家になることは比較的容易になったと思うんですよ。でも僕がデビューしようとした頃は結構SF とかファンタジーだけで書こうとするとかなり難しかったですね。それでもなんとかめげずになんとかやったんですけども。
I owe so much to the manga because the character is so fleshed out and it's just an encyclopedia for everyone.
成り行き的にそのサブキャラとして脇役として出てきたキャラクターなんですけども、それもボツになっちゃったんですけど、僕の当時の担当編集者だった富田さんがこのガリーというキャラクターがすごくいいねってこう言ってくれて、でこのキャラクターを主人公にちょっと短編書いてみないって言ったんですよ。最初はねファンレターの一つも来なかったんですよ。でだからどんなものか全然わかんないですね。とにかく一生懸命書くしかなくて、である程度経ってから最初の1話は確か雑誌に載った作品が人気投票つってはがきがついていて、そこでどれが良かったかみたいながあるんですよ。それで人気投票で確か3位に1話が3位になったんですよ。言われて少し自信を持ってで一生懸命書いたんですけど、なかなかファンレターとか来なくて、でどの程度受け入れられてるのかよく分からなくて、で実際に読者の反応を知ったっていうのはガンムのビジネスジャンプにおけるガンムの連載が終わったのが95年の3月だったかな。その後にブワーってすごい勢いでファンレターが紙袋いっぱい来て、何ってこれでこんなに支持されてたのかなっていうのを初めて知ったんです。
The first chapters evolved into 9 mangas. And then he went even beyond that to tell additional stories in this world.
The first thing I saw was the anime. They had done a short anime that was about 90 minutes long. And my friend Guillermo del Toro said, "You'd really like this." So I checked it out, and I got a lump in my throat at the end of it. I had an emotional reaction. I reacted to it strongly because my oldest daughter was quite young at the time. I saw it as this great female empowerment story. We went after the rights, and then I realized there was this whole rich series of manga books. So then we basically optioned and said, yeah, let's make a movie. Let's make a movie or a series of movies in this world with this character.
It's remarkable how universal the themes are that Kishiro wrote into this. And one of the things that always strikes me about Jim Cameron's movies are how universal the themes are. So this property that Kishiro created and Jim's ideals of what should go into a story are so aligned.
ジェームズ・キャメロンのね、ターミネーター2もう超大好きで、もうターミネーターもターミネーター2も何回も本当に何度見たか分かんないぐらい見返して、でロドリゲス監督のデスペラードとかマーチェーテとかプラネット・オブ・テラーとか超大好きでやっぱりね で、まさかねドルジッ監督がメガホンを取れたね聞くまではびっくりしたんですけど、驚いたんですけど、すごく好きな監督であるんですごく嬉しいです。
So it's a very interesting world with this cyborg technology, and it's readily available. It's not really like anything else that we've seen in movies. There's no bad connotation to being cyborg.
僕はSF っていうのは一種の思想を表明するものだと思っていて、単に宇宙船とかロボットとか出てくれば SF かとそうじゃないだろうと。それ以前の漫画ではサイボーグ009っていう石森章太郎先生が書いたで、ずっとサイボーグは悲しいものだと、早く人間に戻りたいと、そういう描かれ方確かしなかったんです、サイボーグっていうのは。ところが僕は当時は違うだろうと、サイボーグなんだけどじゃあどうしたら人間らしく生きられるのか、そういうふうに考えるべきじゃないかっていう自分の中のこの危機意識というかテーマがあって。
It was important for us that Kishiro be a part of the process. When we first learned of the property, Jim made a trip to Tokyo to meet with Kishiro, because he wanted to look him face to face and make a commitment to him that he would live up to the style of the mangas that Kishiro created in the film itself.
There was a writing process that went on through several drafts. I was working with another writer, Alita, and she brought a great energy to it. Then at a certain point, I sort of felt like we'd kind of hit a wall, so I went off and did my own draft. My own draft was 185 pages long, but it had within it the essence of a very simple love story. Romeo and Juliet love story. She's a cyborg, he's human. They're on opposite sides, but there's just too much page count. And I sort of thought, all right, I've hit a wall again.
It took Jim 5 years to get to a script that he was ready to make. We started getting into pre-production and just doing design work, including an art reel that we had created in 2005. At that same time, however, we looked at the landscape of technology and felt that we could maybe make a movie that Jim had conceived 10 years earlier, which was Avatar.
We got to the point where it was literally a coin toss between Battle Angel and Avatar. And we thought, all right, let's be really smart. Let's develop one system of performance capture to create these CG characters, and then we'll do Avatar and then Battle Angel, or we'll do Battle Angel and then Avatar, but we'll amortize our development for the system across 2 projects. A couple days before we were going to do our first big test with actors. And so I looked at the Battle Angel stuff and I couldn't find a scene that was just CG characters. It was usually CG with human characters in the scene. And I looked at Avatar, there were plenty of scenes that were just pure CG. So we did it as our test. Somewhere in the process of bringing the Avatar characters to life, we sort of fell in love with Avatar. And so then it wasn't a coin toss anymore.
One of the reasons that Jim ultimately chose Avatar is because he thought that by doing Avatar first, the technology that we would learn on that film would benefit Alita in a greater fashion. In fact, having done Alita now, what we have learned is that doing Alita is going to have an even greater impact on the Avatar sequels.
I always felt like I'd just come back around to it at some point. Then with the wild success of Avatar and with things sort of going even farther south in the real world with respect to indigenous rights and climate change and environmental problems and all that, I thought, all right, Avatar is important. I need to keep making these Avatar movies. That might be the highest and best use of my time. And so I kind of gave up Battle Angel as something that I would direct.
When I first read, a good 15 plus years ago, that Jim Cameron was going to do Alita, Battle Angel, I was a fan of the graphic novel and the character, and I thought how amazing his version of that would be. So we've been kind of dreaming about it and waiting for it forever.
And then one day I was just hanging out with my friend Rodríguez. I'm walking him out to his car. He says, by the way, you got anything? And it just went through my head in a split second. Well, there's Battle Angel. And it's almost like subconsciously I had already decided to hand it off to another filmmaker, but only the right filmmaker.
He let it slip that he was probably only going to be doing Avatar movies the rest of his career. And my heart kind of sunk because I wanted to see Battle Angel. So selfishly, I asked him, well, what happens to movies like Alita, Battle Angel? Like as a fan, like as a Comic-Con geek fan, I wanted to know.
And it happened in a split second. I thought I would let go of it for Robert.
Jim said, here, I'm going to give you the script that I wrote. It was way too long. And Jim said, if you could bring it down to a shooting length, you can direct it. On top of that, Jim gave Robert over 600 pages of notes for the story.
I did the same thing with Avatar. I did the same thing with Titanic, just learning everything about the history of Titanic. I think when you're building a world, you have to approach it from that perspective, that you have to create what the audience sees. I think if we're so lucky as to have this film be a success and we get to make some more, we'll go back and we'll feed on that.
Solid.
Robert looked at the work and looked at Jim in the eye and said, I'm not going to rewrite you, because you don't rewrite Jim Cameron. I'm going to edit you.
I was like, oh, that's what I'm doing this summer. I'm going to take home that script and try to figure it out.
He said something like, this is written by a director. I can see the scenes in my head, and I know exactly what to do. Just give me a few weeks.
What I was the most impressed with is how Jim really created his own story that you could see as a Jim Cameron story. The Jim Cameron perspective, his story chops, his emotional stakes. And yet when you would read the graphic novel, you would see how true it stayed to a lot of the things from the graphic novels. He took mainly from books 1, 2, 3, and 4, because he wanted to have Motorball in there. And not just put in for action's sake, but figured out a really cool Jim Cameron high-stakes reason for it to exist.
Players, report to the line.
The amount of inventiveness that he brought to it, even at its script stage, really is what I latched onto.
He came back with a 130-page version. So I took that and I thought, this is gonna suck. It's gonna have all the good stuff compromised or taken out. And I read it in one sitting, and it was the story. It was the story that I had wanted to tell.
We were both shocked that we weren't missing anything from the longer script. We knew things had been taken out, but the core important themes, the character moments, were all there. And that told us that Robert was the right person to parent this child with.
It got onto a very fast track very quickly after that.
One of the things that Robert said to us is that he wanted to treat this movie the way he treated Sin City. He said when he was making Sin City, he made it a Frank Miller-style movie.
Of the original designs. And as an example, Jim really made us watch the anime, actually, saying like, Grishka, it should look like that. And he's gonna look like a variation, but the sort of overall ape-like proportions of the giant arms and the skinnier, shorter legs and all that kind of thing, to the extent that the animators are able to pull that off.
I've had a little upgrade.
Robert was always very, very respectful of what I had written and of the world that Koshiro had created, but he's also not afraid to make it his own. And I wanted to give him as much space as he needed creatively, and I was emphatic about that from the beginning. He's been like a kid in a candy shop with this movie. He just charged off and started making a movie. I think I only visited the set once, and that was by design. I didn't want to signal to everybody involved that I was puppet directing the movie at all. This was Robert's movie from day one.
When we started getting into pre-production with Robert and doing design work, I flew to Tokyo myself and nervously met with Koshiro. Koshiro Sensei, John Landau, nice to meet you. Showing him the cinematic concepts of the pages that he had once created. And it was a great reaction. And while I was there, I extended an invitation to him to come visit us when we were actually making the movie.
で、俺も映画監督になりたいなってこう思った時期あったんですよ。ところが結局もう少し大人になってみるとあんな映画日本にいたら絶対に作れないだろうってすぐに気がついちゃったんですよね。そんなわけで早々に諦めてしまって、で僕は漫画の道に進んだんで、こういうね実際にこう小道具とか作ったり大道具作ったりしてこう撮影してるっていう現場にこれ本当に夢のようですね。
When Koshiro came to Texas to visit our set, it was the first time he had ever been outside of Japan. And I led him out of our offices, and all of a sudden we were on our set in the world that he had created in Iron City. And as we walked down to the courtyard with the fountain and street motorballs, just like he had written on the pages, I turned to see what Koshiro said. And a man of very few words said everything he could possibly say with a smile on his face.
When Yukito Kishiro came to set, I ran up to him and I wrapped my hands around his neck and I kissed him on the cheek, like, I'm so happy you're here. And he is a very shy artist. So he was like, but then he told Jim, he's like, Alita. So that was a really beautiful moment. I was really happy to have him there.
One of the commitments that Jim and I made to Koshiro was when he saw the characters come to life on the big screen, he would know that they were based on the characters of his manga. And we really tried to hold true to that.
Hello, how you doing? Good to see you.
I think Koshiro-san brought some gifts.
Ah. I've been waiting for this.
So Jim, this is his deluxe box, and he wanted to give this to you with
Fantastic.
his, and for his gratefulness.
Fantastic.
For allowing
Thank you.
And John, of course, for you too. So.
Arigato.
All right, here's something. Two things, actually. So this is a signed print of one of my drawings from Avatar.
It's wonderful. It's wonderful.
And this is art from the movie, from the different artists. It says, with infinite gratitude for creating Alita, Gali, and her world. I hope that we have honored your work, your great act of creation with our film, with great admiration and respect.
Thank you.
You are the sensei.
I think the audiences appreciate the fact that they get to visit a very manga world photorealistically as if they were there.
If we are so lucky that the public want us to tell more stories, people can look to places we haven't gone before.
We've got a rich world to draw from that Koshiro has created. 9 books in the original series, and I think he's up to something like 19 books in the later series, which is called The Last Order. So it's a rich universe. I mean, if we're successful at this and people embrace her and embrace what we're doing, it can be open-ended.
People ask me, will characters like Ito come back? Will characters like Zapan come back? Quite possibly. They also ask me, will a character like Hugo come back? As Jim Cameron said, in science fiction, anything is possible.